So, the Studio Series line has been around since 2018, and at the time of filming, Hasbro just released their 110th figure. Now, we're not going to speak to the quality of all of these figures, because some are good and some are bad, but overall, the line is great. The problem is that about 90% of the Studio Series releases got banished to the aftermarket as soon as they went off the shelves, and now people are taking out loans just to afford Studio Series Ironhide. So I want to do a video where I just talk about figures from the Studio Series line that deserve a package refresh. I did set myself a couple ground rules though before I made this list. Mostly just not picking the 5 most expensive Studio Series figures on the aftermarket and putting them in a video, because that's just a bit boring. But some of the most expensive figures on the market I didn't even want to pick. Some of them are just average priced in terms of the aftermarket now, but I think they still deserve a refresh. Which goes into number 5, being the Dark of the Moon Ratchet repaint. The thing with the Ratchet mold itself is that it has been released in recent time. It was in the Buzzworthy Bumblebee line with the Nest colours, and it was in the 5-pack for the 07 bots in its regular colours, but the Dark of the Moon one I think is just a better version. I mean, personally speaking, I just prefer the green. The yellow is not bad, it's a good look in the first and the second movie, and I don't know where the Nest colours necessarily came from, but I think the green is just the best look overall, but it's been years since he's been on the shelves. Pretty certain as well the green version of Ratchet had the best QC of the bunch, even though the Ratchet mold in general is just plagued with QC issues, but I would still love to get him overall. But moving on to number 4, I've cheated a little bit because it's technically 2 different releases, but it's the same character, but it's going to be the Studio Series Drift. So this one, in my opinion, is the no-brainer of the list. We're talking about Studio Series 36 and Studio Series 45. They're both the Age of Extinction and the Last Night variant of Drift. This mainly comes down to the fact that Drift was released in 2019 and 2020, I believe. But the rest of the Age of Extinction and Last Night figures are only just coming out. I mean, Drift came out literal years before the next Last Night release, which was Hot Rod. So if anyone's buying Hot Rods and they want to complete the team, they can't unless they're willing to pay nearly triple what he was originally worth. Thing is, considering how long ago those releases were, I'd actually like Hasbro to take a crack at a new mold of Drift, because the 2 that they released before are just retools. The Last Night Drift is just an altered version of his original release in the Last Night line, and the Age of Extinction one is just a very heavy retool of Dropkick. I feel like regardless we should see a re-release of Drift in some way, whether it's a new mold or just the original ones. Because if Hasbro are now going to go out their way and do the team from Age of Extinction and The Last Night, Drift has to be involved, and newer fans just won't be able to get their hands on these molds for a decent price. So for number 3, I decided to put Studio Series 65, which is the Bumblebee movie Blitzwing. The thing is that not Bumblebee here is probably one of the most iconic things that came out of the Bumblebee movie, because everyone saw him in the trailer and erupted thinking it was Starscream. The thing is that this version of Blitzwing translated the design of Blitzwing from the movie perfectly. It's one of the most faithful recreations I've seen in a long time, and it just makes people want him more. Although this does also lead further into my point of, if they do a re-release of Blitzwing, they may also need to do the Jeep Bumblebee mold, because that's one of those pairings that people would love to have together. I mean, Hasbro could even go out their way and do a 2-pack of Blitzwing and Jeep B if they wanted to. It's definitely one of those packs that would sell, and they're clearly for it, considering the amount of packs that we're getting at the minute. But the Blitzwing figure is just amazing all round, and I think the people who weren't there at the time really did miss out. I think it would just be a great chance for them to give us that version of him again. So, number 2 is probably one people won't fully agree with, because I know this mold gets a bit of hate, but it's going to be the Studio Series 11 Lockdown. I do know that this mold does get criticised a fair bit, but it also does get a fair bit of love. I personally really enjoy it and wish I had my own version of him. He was created very early on during Studio Series, so the quality may be a bit debatable, like a lot of them were at the time, but I do think he holds up to this day. I do personally consider him the best version of Lockdown that we've gotten at retail that isn't third party, but that's also not much of a competition. Because the thing is that Lockdown is the main villain of Age of Extinction, and I feel like he's one of those ones that most people would want to get, even if they're not fully into the Bayverse collection. Especially considering that Age of Extinction Prime did get leaked recently, so there's no better opportunity to give us that version of Lockdown again to pair them up. Overall though, for Lockdown, he's definitely one of those figures that Hasbro needs to revisit, because they haven't talked about him in years, but he would look great next to all the other Age of Extinction figures that released in recent time, and the ones that are going to come. But I'm worried we may not, because they've done a G1 Lockdown. But before I get to number 1, I do want to do a bit of an honourable mention, because he's not in the Studio Series line, but I feel like he could go into the 86 line, and that's the Kingdom Commander Crafts Rodimus Prime. I know it hasn't been too long since he's been on the shelves, and I think some places still have him, but I think it would be a great opportunity to chuck a Commander Rodimus into the 86 line just to complete the look. I do think, though, regardless, Rodimus is bound for an 86 release. I feel like they won't leave him just the Kingdom, and I feel like they do need another Commander class for the 86 line soon. But number 1, and I don't know how many people is going to agree with this, is the Studio Series 27 Clunker B. The thing is that this is the design of debatably the most iconic character from the Bayverse movies. The 1977 Camaro is very iconic when it comes to Bumblebee, and one that all the movie fans remember. It's definitely one of those ones that people would love to own. But I am specifically talking about Studio Series 27 Bumblebee, and not Studio Series 1, because 27 has more details and he isn't riddled with as much QC issues. It is just one of those designs I would love to see more readily available and on the shelves, because I'm getting kind of sick of the amount of times they're reusing the concept Camaro mold. Everyone owns that mold, I think we're all sick of it. But he's definitely number 1 for me, purely down to how iconic the design is and how much I do enjoy the look of the mold. But yeah, that's my top 5. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of them. I had a lot of fun making this video, so expect more. And I can't wait until 6 months down the line where I'm completely right and all of these are right on the shelves because of this video. Okay, bye!